Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 275. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Kulture Elevation is a Black-owned apparel company honoring Black culture and supporting Black entrepreneurs. Welcome, Alicia Garner, founder of Kulture Elevation.
Good morning, Dr. Richards. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. You know, I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and Kulture Elevation?
Absolutely. So to the audience out there, thank you for joining and tuning in to hear a little bit about culture. Culture is kind of the brainchild behind creativity. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she really was the inspiration behind this company. Her spirit in terms of being an artist, being driven, having that entrepreneurial fire is what really ignited me to want to do something to build a legacy around her, our family, getting into that idea of generational wealth and what that means. So culture is art, poetry, music, design, everything that encompasses Blackness, and making sure that we are affirming that throughout your experience and interaction with culture.
Talk about starting Kulture.
Absolutely. So how Kulture started was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I had a dream when I was living in the Virgin Islands, and in that dream, I saw a logo, and I woke up and I was so distraught because I didn't understand what was this logo about. I knew it was going to mean that I was going to embark on the entrepreneurial journey. I just didn't know in what capacity. Fast forward year 2020, I want to say the end of 2019, we're getting kind of restless. I'm realizing, hey, I want to do something different. I'm not using my creativity in the same way that I would like to display it. So how can I do that? And at the time, I was kind of going through my mind, do I want to start a business? What was that going to look like? And I ended up having some conversations with a friend of mine. So initially, it was her and I kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. Culture kind of evolved into what it is today. We initially started the company where it was her and I kind of doing things together. And then throughout the process, a lot of things happened. And so we ended up kind of choosing to mutually split. And then it became more of a family-driven business. So the focus was always on, entrepreneurialism, elevating Black voices, giving my daughter a platform. So now it's really focused on my husband, my daughter, and I really bringing culture to life.
You talked about generational wealth and legacy. When it's all said and done, how does Alicia want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone that inspires people to really find strength in figuring out who they are. I think a lot of us grow up and we are told who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to look, what is acceptable and what is not. And I found that through my journey with first living in Illinois, being born and raised in Illinois, getting the opportunity to live in the St. Thomas Virgin Islands for 3 years, that was an opportunity for me to really reflect on what matters and what makes the most sense for my family moving forward. And so for me, generational wealth is more than just handing money to my daughter. I want her to be able to say, I now have a way to truly shine in a way that's authentic without having to dim my shine in any way. And so culture is really trying to push the envelope and allow Black creatives to have that space where they can be authentic and they're not going to be judged for being eclectic, because we're always told we're too loud, we're too this, we're too that. Instead, it's really elevating that type of energy so that you can see the beauty in it.
And how does your platform or your company support Black creatives?
So we are in our infant stages. So right now, what we really have on the website is more around our apparel. So it's very inviting, engaging, great affirmations that really strive to inspire. As we're going through the summer months and we're growing, we'll also be having different series where we're talking to different people, elevating our youth through history, music, stories, all of those different things. So there's so much more to come and ways to partner with culture. So I'm always looking for opportunities to partner with other entrepreneurs, have the dialogue, get the word out, and really spread the news that we're trying to do something a little bit different.
And what can we do right now to support culture?
Some great things that you could do to support us is we have a YouTube channel, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. Please like us, follow us, check out our website. Feel free to place an order. We are a pre-order campaign company. So how that typically works is every month I come up with new design shirts. I put those out on the site. I give everybody the opportunity from probably the first part of the month to around the 26th to place your order. And then at that time, we process everything once a month. And the great thing about that is, just speaking to what culture is all about, we have teamed up with various other Black entrepreneurs who help us throughout the culture pipeline. So when you purchase from culture, you're also supporting another Black business that we work with who does all of our printing and design work. Our marketing work is done through a Black entrepreneur. So we really pride ourselves on working with other creatives to get culture's message out and to give them an opportunity to shine.
That's awesome. Talk about the pandemic, pivot, and profit.
As a startup, our biggest challenge is that people just don't know we're out there. So this is, I really am grateful for platforms like this who give me the opportunity to speak about culture, let people know what we're about, because it has been tough. Everyone is looking at the necessities right now. How do I get by? From day to day, there might be things that I might have to make decisions on, purchasing versus not purchasing. So culture is one of those things where we want to get to the point where it's not just a nice to have, it's literally a necessity. So the pandemic has really forced me to be really creative in terms of how I'm reaching my audience, what I can do in terms of meeting them where they're at, which is why I'm, working through a lot of different series on how we can assist the community with questions that they might have, whether it's in business or how do you get started as an entrepreneur? What are things that you wish you knew about? Just all of these things that we don't normally have conversations about, and giving that information on our platform. So there's a lot more work to be done since we are so new. But I really try to focus on the fact that culture is really about doing the right thing. And when you do the right thing and you do it with a whole heart, great things are going to come your way. So it's been slow moving, but I know we're going to get to where we want to be.
What do you want to give and what do you want to get?
What I want to give is a way for people who've always felt like they were kind of outside of the clique, so to speak. When I was growing up, I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. I never really fit in a lot of different circles. So, my parents were Jamaican. And so my upbringing was very different than a lot of the kids that I went to school with. My dad was extremely strict, no boys calling, and you are not hanging out and you are not doing X, Y, and Z. And I would see my friends get to do a lot of these things. And I would think, I'm really missing out. And I feel like the ugly duckling out here, and I'm really not sure where I fit in. So I it's interesting now that I'm a mom and I look at my daughter and the way that my husband and I are raising her, and I see some of that awkwardness, right? So it's more about how can we take those kids that have that degree of awkwardness and they're trying to find their way and give them a path so that they see that being different is actually cool. You don't want to be like everybody else. The trendsetters are the ones who are a little bit awkward and a little bit different. And so I really want culture to be a place for people who have had that experience where they can come, they can really express themselves, see themselves a little bit differently, not take things so seriously, and maybe find something that really resonates with them in a way that allows them to change their thinking and propels them to the next phase.
I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name the person that you're talking to, living or not, and this person has really inspired you. Who are you talking to and what are you saying?
Wow, that is really powerful. So for me, I would choose Bob Marley. And the reason I would choose Bob Marley is because I have such fond memories of his music growing up. I literally learned all of his music before I knew any American music growing up. So when I would go to school and everybody was singing, I didn't know who Jodeci or R. Kelly was until like years after everybody else, and they thought I was crazy. But growing up in a West Indian home, Bob Marley was like our hero. So if I had the chance to talk to him, I would say, you know, your spirit is really felt throughout your music, throughout the legacy that you have left in your children to this day. I literally have a sense of peace and calm when I hear certain songs that Bob Marley has sung, and the relevance of it has stretched from his time into mine and beyond. You know, the plight of Black people, the ability to reach the masses, to have that inner peace and, you know, have the ability to say, everything isn't always the way that I want it to be, but I'm still going to persevere and be the change that I want to see in the world. And to me, that is so inspiring and really what culture is trying to bring to life in terms of we're all having this human existence right now. Spiritually, what does that mean? You know, when we move into the next plane, what do we want people to remember us by? And I feel like Bob Marley embraces and encompasses everything good when it comes to a person that has been through intense struggle.
Talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger you?
Oh man, I think the younger me, I would say, you're okay. You're on the right path. Continue to go against the grain. When everybody's going right and you're going left, you're not doing it wrong. You're doing what you're supposed to do, because when you're following everybody else, you're not being true to yourself. So keep moving in the left direction and know and trust the process that it's going to work out.
Tell us what you're most grateful for in life.
I am truly grateful that I have the parents that I have. My mom and dad, whom have sacrificed so much for me and my brother growing up. I just remember my dad going to work, you know, long hours, getting a trade, coming to this country. My parents literally have been in the United States for probably, almost 40 years. So when they came to this country, they had nothing. They literally built everything that they had brick by brick. And I literally was able to watch that growing up. I saw what sacrifice meant. I saw what hard work meant. And we never went without. So if it meant that mom had to take a couple of dollars from here to make sure that I was able to go to piano lessons, she made sure that happened. And I was extremely grateful for that. And I think as kids, we really don't understand that until we're adults. And we have an opportunity to see what that's like when you're having to make some of those tough decisions. And then looking at my dad, who came here and with very little education and has really done tremendous things for himself and for our family to ensure that we were always taken care of. He was one of those people that, even though he didn't have all of the degrees and everything behind him, his common sense and his ability to reason surpass, anything that you could possibly think about. And so I really respect that about him. And it's so funny because now that I'm older, people will say, you sound just like your dad when I ask you a question. And so I actually take that as a compliment because I think my dad's pretty smart. Just things like that really make me grateful for what they've done, what they've been able to accomplish, and the morals and values that they've instilled in me.
Talk about raising capital for Kulture. How did you raise the capital to start the business?
Initially, I have been raising the capital myself. So I put in a little bit every single month into a business account, and I make sure that I do that on a consistent basis. The other ways that I kind of look at cutting costs are when I can get coupon codes for different services that we might need, negotiating with different people to say, hey, we're a startup, this is what we're trying to do. Is there any way that we can work together? And I found that as an entrepreneur and meeting other entrepreneurs, there really is a community where they realize that they're in the same boat as you. So it's a lot of bartering. So I can help you do this. You can help me do that. We can work on these discounted prices between each other. And then you're not so focused on how do I raise a ton of money to start? And it's more of an incremental process. So throughout that, I'm also, doing webinars and things like that so that I can figure out what grants are available. What does it mean to have business credit and how do you go about doing that? So I'm doing kind of a multi-phased approach so that I can look at the best ways to do it without getting in over my head. Because what I've seen other entrepreneurs do, which I really didn't want to do, is get as much money as they can. They don't really have a plan up front on how they're going to spend those funds or what's the best course of action in order to make sure that that money is being utilized properly. And then you're either running out of cash or your overhead is outpacing what you're able to bring in. So for me, I've really tried to take the approach of being very fiscally responsible. And, that's kind of why we're doing the pre-order model around the company to get started, because that way we're only purchasing what has already been ordered. So that definitely keeps overhead low, decreases the amount of capital that I have to raise at a given time. But I can also continue to incrementally save until we start to get the profits we need for the business to run on its own.
The word is listening. What is that resounding sound or the message that your generation is saying that we should be listening to?
That is a great question. I think our generation is to the point where we're no longer asking. We are doing. We are no longer asking for permission. We are no longer, coming to people and asking for breadcrumbs. If it's not there and it's not built, we're going to build it. We're going to create it. We're going to push the envelope. And I think that really resonates across, my generation and people that are trying to see things differently, given the state of the nation that we're dealing with right now and all of the turmoil and impact that police brutality is having, that office bullying is happening, just women being able to wear their natural hair. Those are things that we take as an act of resistance. For me, for a long time, it was really hard for me to accept my natural hair. When I was really young, my mom and dad, I had an afro until I was 9. So, now that would be acceptable. But back then, I was tormented because my parents were, again, everybody was going right and they were going left. And I didn't see the value of that when I was that age. But now that I'm older, I truly get it. But things like that, being able to be okay, be centered, say, now I'm wearing locks. 10 years ago, I would have never done that. I was not comfortable enough in myself to say, I'm going to go into corporate America with locks and be completely comfortable with that. So I think that we are getting to a point where we are accepting ourselves, we are loving ourselves, and we are doing it in a way that's true to who we've always been, but we've been forced to suppress it.
What is the best decision you've made as a leader?
I think the best decision I have made is to allow culture to be organic. So I'm not trying to create something that is not my voice, that, is really focused on quickly gaining momentum without thinking about how is this going to impact the next generation, the next 6 to 8, 9, 10, 12 months, and just being really thoughtful in terms of you can't put the cart before the horse. You really need to have a strong foundation to start with so that as you're building and this thing gets larger, it has something to sit on. So I didn't want to just come out of the gate and say, oh, we've got this and we've got that and we've got this and have a half-baked idea. So I've really taken the time to cultivate relationships, to build the back-end infrastructure of culture, to make sure that, vendors are in place so that I can meet my obligations. So I think that really being methodical and diligent about how I'm structuring and laying everything out is going to allow culture to stay around for the long haul.
What is your zone of genius?
I think if my husband was to answer that question, he would say my ability to adapt. So no matter what is thrown at me, I have a rule. So if something happens and it's not what I want it to be, I give myself 24 hours to soak. That's it. After 24 hours, I literally go into problem solving mode. So this didn't work out the way that I want. Okay, I'm really sad. I'm bummed. It's not what I wanted to happen. But now it's time to figure out how to fix it. So for the next 24 hours after that, I'm literally doing research. I'm calling people. I'm looking into every resource possible to fix whatever that situation is. And so you can be pretty sure that if something comes to me and it's not the way that it should be, by the time that it leaves, it's done.
What is your weakness as an entrepreneur?
I think my weakness is that sometimes I'm not always as focused as I should be. Like I literally want to give myself time for me. So I can be a little bit selfish and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. That can be a good or a bad thing depending on your industry. Some people are really good about segmenting themselves in multiple places where I'm I'm giving myself 2 hours to work on this, 3 hours to work on that, because I want to be able to say at the end of the night, here's some time that I still have left for myself. I guess it could be a bad thing in the sense that I'm not pushing culture as fast or as hard as the average person would, but I'm doing it at a pace where it's more comfortable for me to where I'm not going to experience that burnout as quickly.
Think about the last month. What was your biggest win?
My biggest win in the last month. So I guess I will look at it as personally, school is out. My daughter has been in distance learning for the last year and I survived.
Congratulations.
That was a huge win. I cannot tell you how difficult it has been this last year trying to hold down, culture, full-time job, my daughter, life. We really don't realize how much of a super moms and dads we were until COVID hit. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this is a reality, a taste of reality for real.
And how do you celebrate your wins?
I celebrate my wins by, just having some fun. I'll take my daughter to the museums down. So we live in Dallas, so I'll go to the museums in downtown Dallas. It's really important for me to surround her with all things that have to do with culture, art, all of the arts. We go to plays, we, go to different events, cultural events. Last weekend, I was at a Pan-African drum festival where I was able to see, multiple people from throughout the city just coming together and really spreading love and peace and dignity among the community. And I love doing things like that.
Who are our leaders? I want you to define the leaders of today. Who are our leaders? And what do you think they're saying to us today?
Personally, I feel that leaders are ones who don't really define themselves as leaders. They are people who are just about action. So some people that come to mind, just off the top of my head, I look at Regina King. This sister is out here putting out content that is pushing the envelope and making people think differently. That to me is true leadership. She's saying, for so long we've been boxed into these slave roles and, all of these different things that categorize Black life, but we're not speaking about the magic that is within the Black community. You had all of these different opportunities to tell these stories, but you've neglected us. So now I'm going to do that. And so I look at that as a true testament of what leadership looks like. You don't sit there and say that you're a leader. You're out there and you're doing it.
Talk about your mentors or influencers. Who are your top two? You can define it as a mentor, as influencer, and what lessons did they teach you?
I actually have had the opportunity to work with our local Chamber of Commerce. And within the Chamber of Commerce, they offer a program to entrepreneurs called SCORE. SCORE offers you free mentorship throughout the course of your business, however long you want to meet with them. So I actually have 3 mentors. I meet with them every other week. And usually how that works is I'll give them an agenda of everything that I want to talk about, areas that I might be struggling with, and just going to them for their general advice. And so these 3 people are very, very different people. And so the beauty of that is I'm getting 3 different perspectives, and I'm getting those kind of watch out points throughout that conversation. And so some of the things that I've learned along the way are, certain people throughout your entrepreneurship journey, they're going to have a season. They're going to come in your life. They're going to be there for a certain amount of time, and then you're going to have to cut ties, and that's okay. So that was one lesson that I had to learn. Another one is around just being willing to start forging relationships with other people who are like-minded. As entrepreneurs, a lot of us are maybe the first generation entrepreneurs in our circles. So you're not always surrounded by people who have that type of thinking. So what does it mean to elevate your circle and try to incorporate people who are themselves entrepreneurs, who have gone through that or are newly embarking on this journey, and having some conversation around what does that look like? How do we do things better? What resources are available? And your mentors are that kind of guide and segue to help you find those resources and bridge that gap. So I think for me, that's been an invaluable part of entrepreneurship, is having those conversations, having those relationships, and learning from people who have done it or are in the process of doing it themselves.
Is there a social cause tied to culture?
I believe that there is. I think you can't talk about the Black experience and not fill a social void. For me, one thing that I really am disheartened by is the lack of Black history in our schools. I think it's absolutely terrible that half of the things that I've learned as an adult has only been because I've sought out that information. And so, as you're going through school, you're always talking about maybe 5 or 6 figures in Black history, and there's so many more layers to that. So what I want to do with culture is allow those stories to be told from a perspective that kids can relate to. We don't talk about Mansa Musa in school. We don't talk about Nanny of the Maroons in school. All of these people have helped shape history and our collective, experience in such a way, yet our children are not learning about that. So to me, it's really important that culture is able to help bridge that gap, provide that education, and give kids a way to learn that in a way where they feel connected to it and have fun while doing it. And so that for me is really important, something that we want to do, that we're working on, that we're, actively pursuing so that we can make a difference.
If someone wrote an autobiography about you, what would the title be and why?
I think the title would be Alicia Garner, A Life Lived Unapologetically. And I think it would say that because throughout this journey on Earth, I've learned so much about who I am, who I want to be, who I don't want to be, and how to protect my energy. How do I not let outside factors change who I am at the core? And so I really want to make sure that as I'm, going through culture, I'm building culture, people see that side. They see somebody who is secure in themselves, secure in what they're able to do and bring to the table, and do it in such a way that it's, got integrity behind it. It's respected. It's looked at as the gold standard.
What do you need right now that you don't have to move the needle forward?
I think it goes back to, your first question around capital. Culture definitely needs capital. So I'm in the works trying to figure out, the best way to get that capital, whether it's through grants, business credit, all of those areas. So I'm definitely wanting to reach out to people who are more knowledgeable in that area so that we can get the funding we need to put these programs in place and to help support the vision and mission.
What problem exists in the world today that you'd like to change?
I think that we're getting there, but we're not fully there. Is that feeling of belonging. I think that many people go through life and they tend to do what people expect of them versus what they want for themselves. And so now you're in a space where you're kind of living a lie. And so one thing I want to do with culture is shine light on some of the areas that have been considered taboo for many years, especially in the Black community, and make it okay to embrace that side of us. For so long, spirituality has either been you were into church or you weren't. And if you weren't into church, what was wrong with you? Why is that? Versus saying, if you're not into church or if you're not into certain aspects of what we consider tradition, what are you into and why? And why are you drawn to that? And so that to me is a story that I really want to bring to light and allow people who think a little bit differently to have a platform to speak their mind and explain why they have chosen the path that they have.
Talk about self-care. What does self-care look like for Alicia?
Oh, yes. I'm a big proponent of self-care. So for me, what I really enjoy are audiobooks. I have a vast audiobook library and, everyone's talking about the greatest self-help book they read, or, I've read this on entrepreneurialism. I read those too, but my true love is mafia romances. I love to sit and be left alone for hours at a time, get into a mafia romance where the heroine is kind of spunky and she's giving the guy a run for his money, and then they fall in love and, all that good stuff. So I'm a hopeless romantic at heart. So that's one thing that I love to do. And then another area that really resonates with me is just getting in my car and driving while listening to music. So I absolutely, to the core, have always been so in love with music, whether it's reggae, Afro beats, R&B, jazz, just all of those genres. And, there's some songs where you literally can remember where you were at that place in time where that song played and it takes you back. So those are a couple of things that I definitely do for self-care.
So what are you listening to right now in terms of a book?
I just finished one. It was called The Queen Move. This one wasn't necessarily a mafia romance, but it was definitely a romance novel. And the thing I like about it is I like books that keep you guessing. Like some of them are so obvious, like, yeah, this is going to happen, where I like twists and turns. And this one had a lot of twists and turns. So I definitely enjoyed it.
Talk about the worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
I think the worst moment for me was when I initially started Culture with my friend and realized it really wasn't panning out the way that I was hoping it would. And we both walked away. And I think that she looked at the situation one way and I looked at it another. But at the end of the day, I have so much respect for her. I have so much respect for her talents and what she brought to the table, even though that relationship didn't work out. So it was really tough because when you're starting something with someone and you have these vast visions of what you think it could be and what that relationship could grow to be in terms of how you're working together, it really was a sobering situation where I had to take a step back and say, okay, now that this isn't going how I initially planned, how do I restructure things so that we can move forward? Because quitting is not an option. I still have the drive and love for what I'm doing, and I have to figure this out. So I think that that was the toughest thing.
And speaking of that, when you go in business with someone, it's like a marriage.
It is. And it's one of those things where, being my first time, I didn't know all of the ins and outs or what to really watch out for. And I think even though we had a lot of conversations up front about what that should look like and how it should pan out, ultimately just where we were at in life were two different places. And so I'm one of those people where I'm very business oriented. So I usually make decisions that are very logical. Like my mother always has said, you are your father's child. So it's very logic driven versus emotion driven. And so I think for her, on her side, it was more emotional driven versus my logic side. So sometimes that clashed and it didn't always work. So, as you kind of alluded to within a marriage, when those types of personalities come together, either they do really well or they don't mesh as well. So I'm grateful that I went through that process and learned what that means and what that looks like. And now it's helping me to look at relationships a little bit different in terms of business, where maybe I shouldn't always just focus on the logic and I need to put some little bit of emotion in there. But for me, that's really, really tough. Like, I'm not an emotional girl. I'm the last one you'll see cry. I'm the one who's like, don't cry. Like, this is what you need to do to fix it. Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so focused on tears? I always want to fix it. And so that's my innate nature, is to see a challenge and not cry about it. It's like, okay, what do we need to do to get out of this situation versus, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And so that it's just a really ebb and flow in terms of how we came to this crossroad.
What have you not done in life that you dream about often that you would like to do?
I absolutely have to go to Africa. It has been my lifelong dream I want to go to Benin and check out all of the history and culture there. I would love to view Ghana. From what I've heard, it's very similar to Jamaica. We have some Ghanaian friends, and they said, you guys are so much like us. I felt like when I went to Jamaica, I was back in Ghana. So I'm like, okay, I need to see this up close and personal. So I would love to visit there and just be able to figure out, where my lineage truly came from. We're all African descent. And I've been told that I have some friends that are Nigerian as well. And they were like, you look like you could be Igbo. And I said, really? And they're like, yeah, you have that look that there's a tribe, and I guess they're Igbos, and you could fit right in. So I'm like, that's another place I need to visit and check out and see if I see anyone who looks like me running around Nigeria.
Talk about your why. Why culture?
There's so much depth to that. I live in a world where my day-to-day job doesn't allow for creativity in the way that I would like to see it. And I always feel like I have something to say. I always have advice to give, or, lessons learned that someone else can benefit from. So for me, culture is allowing me the opportunity to leave a legacy, to be myself in a way that's authentic. And it's also allowing me to give my daughter something to look up to. I don't think until I had a child, I realized just how important that was for me. They watch you, everything you do. When I got my locks done, my daughter was like, why can't I have locks? And I'm like, okay, are you sure you want to do this? Do you realize that this is a permanent, decision? She's like, nope, mom, I want that. I want my hair just like yours. And it just kept resonating with me. Like, the more I do good, the more I put good out into the world, that comes back to you. That, my daughter is going to benefit from that. She's going to see that. And that's the example that I'm setting for her. And knowing yourself and knowing who you are, who you came from, your legacy, all of that really plays into your confidence. And I want her to grow up and be a confident individual who is able to let her artistry speak to the masses in a way that makes sense to her. So up until this point, I haven't seen anything that had what I was looking for. So it was time for me to build it.
Talk about your career journey and that interception or collision with culture. And you talked about authenticity and being, and how did that become?
So interesting story. As I had mentioned before, I grew up in Illinois. Well, I always knew that I did not want to die in Illinois. I wanted to go somewhere else, live a fun life, experience things, just anything. So I had made it a point to really kind of develop my LinkedIn profile. And so through multiple webinars, things like that, they said LinkedIn is the new way to go in terms of finding jobs. So I was contacted by a recruiter who was recruiting for a position in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. So initially when she contacted me, I was like, sure, I'll, check it out, see what happens. And what turned out to be, sure, if it happens, was, oh, we're actually going. And throughout the process, my husband was very apprehensive, like, I don't want to live on an island. I don't know if that's for me. It's a very different life. And I'm like, there's certain things that have to happen. I think I had 3 different things. So at the time, we had a rental house, we had our regular house, and there was something else. I had to make a certain amount of money before it would make sense for us to leave. And literally, my house sold in 7 days. My rental house, my dad decided he would help, and he managed the property while we were away. And the company was able to meet me where I needed to be financially. So it was literally a no-brainer. I had to do it. So went to the Virgin Islands, worked for a company. And when I tell you, that was the first time where I saw the president of the company was Black. The marketing director was Black. The HR director was Black. I was surrounded by Black leaders who were doing amazing things on that island. And, people were coming and they had their afros, they had their locks, they had, all these cultural events, and everybody did it with their head held high. And for me, professionally, I had never seen that. It was literally the opposite. When you're on the mainland, you are expected to be a certain way, act a certain way. Companies are not as open-minded, but here I'm living on an island with people that look exactly like me. And I'm no longer a minority. And that was so empowering. That was giving me the ability to really find and dig deep and say, this is what I want professionally versus what I don't want professionally. I really know now because I'm living it every single day. So I think after that experience, coming back to the United States, that was kind of a wake-up call for me. I really wanted to work for a company that allowed that level of transparency and allowed you to be yourself. So that was kind of one of my top priorities when looking for another role. But then also culture, now I feel as if that experience really pushed me in the direction to build it, because now I have a frame of reference. I want to build that company that I was a part of and give more people that experience. How cool is it that you can literally come to work in a head wrap and nobody thinks any differently of you, and it's not considered unprofessional? So that's where I really felt that the 2 worlds collided for me, is when I went through that experience.
If you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
So the one question I would have asked is, what do you wish you would have known maybe 15 years ago, and why? And for me, what I wish I would have known is how to be an entrepreneur at a younger age, how to build business credit, how to set up your entity and what that looks like. Because the longer you have established your name, the longevity of the company, the more you have access to different things, whether it's grants, other entrepreneurs and their ideas, just being able to grow more in more of the direction that I am now. I think that I'm kind of behind. So if I would have been able to get this information 10 years ago, I think that culture would be so much bigger and far reaching than it is currently. But I don't think that that's going to stop me in any way. You know, we're still going to grow. We're still going to be a household name at some point, but I wish we could have done it so much sooner.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready.
Your favorite color?
Black.
Your first job?
Kenny Rogers Roasters.
The last movie you saw?
You know, I can't even remember. I watched so many. I have no idea.
You relax doing what?
Reading audiobooks.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Favorite singer right now is, I really like her. I think she's really, really good. And I always my go-to in terms of rappers is DMX.
Your favorite dance song?
I'm not much of a dancer, but I love Afrobeat.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Pizza.
Your favorite month?
June.
Work out or hit the couch?
I think it's a toss-up. Either or. It depends on my mood.
Alicia Garner, thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with Kulture? And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Yes. So you can find us at www.cultureelevation.com. And you can also find us at Facebook at Kulture Elevation Incorporated. Same thing on Instagram, Kulture Elevation Incorporated, as well as LinkedIn. So please, please, please connect with us. Check us out. And you can also reach me with any questions that you have at info@cultureelevation.com.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity and, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Congratulations, Brian from Racine, Wisconsin, our July winner. Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.